Hey everybody, Kurt Von Onen here with Manana No Mas. In this live, we're going to talk about a subject that's come up a lot, and people ask me how I do it all the time. You know, I run multiple masterminds, coaching classes, training classes. You haven't lived until you've been in Los Angeles and you're training 100 people at a time how to run the election, right? That was a fun class to teach and keep control of. But people ask me all the time. They say, well, how do you stay calm during tough conversations? And let's just be more specific and say tough client conversations. So how to stay calm during tough client conversations. For this talk, I actually created some notes. I wanted to make sure that I address things logically. I caught myself in a live the other day where I was trying to make a point, and I'm not sure the point actually got made. Like, I started realizing I was talking in this giant circle around the subject, but not really getting to the subject. Because when you're talking online, you have a diversified audience. You don't know who's watching, and you want to make sure you're communicating kindly and gently and with equity and all of these fun buzzword names. But I'm still like a brass tacks kind of dude. So it's like, I want to be direct, and sometimes you can't. So I made some notes this time. So remember, we're going to talk about how to stay calm during tough client conversations. And this happens all the time. Tough client conversations don't have to be adversarial, like I quit or I'm going to fire this person. No, but like tough conversations, like they're asking you to do something that's outside the scope of work, or you've sent 3 invoices and you still don't have a payment. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to have tough conversations. Let's say you're a freelancer, you're working for a company under contract, and they assign people to your team. And now it seems like you're in charge of training their staff, but that wasn't really what you signed up for. You didn't sign up to educate their whole staff. You signed up to perform a task. So there are ways that you can address these things and these awkward moments. And I think one of the biggest things to recognize is you need to stay calm. Whenever the juices start flowing and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or your cackles are up, or your fear monitor is pegging a little bit, you need to step back a little bit and stay calm, and then try to think of like the root cause. That's something that I know some people really struggle with, but a lot of times when you're having a conversation with another human being and they seem defensive, or they seem aggressive, or they seem off-putting in some way, sometimes it's important to figure out, like, why do they feel that way? Why are they coming at you with this kind of energy? You don't know what anyone else's day has been before you've started speaking to them. You don't know if they spilled coffee on themselves. You don't know if they fought with a spouse. You don't know what is going on. I had just last week, I'll share this one. I had an interaction with someone that I contract with. And so I'm the provider, they're the client in this situation. And I do some editing for them. And they wrote me a Slack message that said, I'm not happy at all that you're going to squeeze these in right before our weekly meeting and get this done. I don't want my stuff to get rushed. Well, for like the last year, I've been time blocking certain parts of a day to do this type of work, to have it ready by a certain time. I always wanted to make sure that I was done on time, and I time blocked it accordingly. And whether I did it then or I did it 3 days earlier, it would still be the same amount of time spent. Like, nothing was being rushed, and nothing was being squeezed through. So I didn't respond. I didn't respond at all, because in some cases, text or emails, they don't communicate emotion properly. And we have to recognize that as well. So I waited for our live meeting, and we're on the live meeting. And I said, hey, just as a point of reference, each one of these edit jobs takes a certain amount of time. If we look at the time charts, we'll see that we're still spending the same amount of time, whether we do it on Friday or we do it on Tuesday. You for the last year, you've been time blocked for this segment of the week. I'm open to talk about time blocking your work for a different segment of the week, if that would make you feel better. But But at the end of the day, this is the time that it takes. This is what you've been billed for. This is the service we have been offering, and you've seemed happy. So can you communicate to me why, when you wrote that message, you were unhappy? Turns out, had nothing to do with us at all. Nothing to do with Mañana No Mas or the services we provide. Turns out, they were having a discussion with a different vendor earlier in the day. Their emotions were out of whack, and they sent that message to us kind of in the moment. And they didn't really think through what our relationship has been and how well we've performed over the last year. And so while I wasn't fishing for compliments, it turned into a compliment situation where they said, hey, you're the expert. I've hired you. You get it done every time. I'll just defer to your expertise, and you do it as you need fit. And then that's the conversation we had. But you'll notice how I addressed that. One was, I said I wanted to do it in person. I didn't want to do it through text. I didn't want to do it through email. I wanted to make sure I understood the emotion of the conversation. I also stayed calm, and I also explained kind of the information around the topic. Like, this is how much time it takes on average. Whether we do it on Thursday or Tuesday, we're going to get the same result. I'm open and I'm flexible to try and make you happier, but I'm not sure what that result would net because the work's going to be the same, right? So you see, it's kind of like setting the reason, being open to change, staying calm, and having that conversation face-to-face instead of through text or email. In that situation, that worked out really, really well. So I say, number one, stay calm and recognize the impact of an emotional response. And sometimes when you get an emotional response, it's not even directed for you. It might be directed at you, but it's not directed for you. It is very common for people to mush things together instead of compartmentalize things properly. So, I mean, we hear the joke all the time about a husband being in trouble for something he did in his dreams, right? Or did it in his wife's dreams. And so we hear that all the time, like that's a joke. But that's like, she's not mad. She's giving you the anger towards you, but she's not really angry at you, right? If I could put that in a way that makes sense. In all this emotional stuff and all these responses, and in the middle of staying calm, it's important to recognize that you're the professional in the conversation. Even if you are speaking to a boss or a client or someone that, on that ladder seems like they would be above you, remember that you are still a professional and you need to have that professional outlook. Now, if you're going to meet with somebody and it's going to be about something that is a difficult conversation, wouldn't it stand to reason that you would conduct some pre-meeting research? So don't just jump into one of these difficult conversations without having some homework done. In the example I gave you guys, I said, hey, I time block you in every week. This is how much time that it generally takes on average. This is the work that's performed. I was ready, right? I had the information ready for the call instead of just saying, hey, I read your message. What do you mean you're not happy? That's one way to go at it, I suppose, if you want to have an argument and lose a client. But the other way to go at it is, hey, I got your message and I gave it some consideration. And after considering how we do the job, when we do the job, how the job is delivered, I thought that was making you happy. If it's not, I'm open to discuss its changes as long as it stays within the scope of work. So when you do that, it's very important that you set a clear agenda. So if you walk into a difficult conversation, like it's going to be a negotiation, stay calm, watch the emotional responses, do your homework, but have a clear agenda. I talk about this tablet all the time, this Remarkable 2. I plan my meetings. I have little bullet points and outlines or notes that I see for myself. Like I told you, I have notes for this right now to do this live. I've got some notes. I've got an agenda. So I'm prepared to have a conversation. I'm prepared to see some comments come in and maybe interact with some people when they come in. I might want to practice some scenarios and responses, but realistically, I'm pretty quick on my feet. I really don't think I need to practice a response. But I do want to think, I want to be conscious of what is a potential question or an objection that a client's going to have, and how would I react to that? Just today, I had a client on a call say something along the lines of, is it possible to have administrators in the account, but limit what administrators can do in the website based on volume? And it might be, but my response was pretty quick and pretty definite. Why? Because I anticipate these types of questions from this client, and I was ready. And I said, well, you've only got 3 administrators in the account to begin with. Administrators are put in position, assumably because they're trusted individuals, and they're in charge of the project, and they're the ones responsible for adding assets to the project. So if we restrict them and slow them down in the process, it hurts the overall project. What I encourage us to consider is different roles within the website that have different capabilities. So maybe we keep it at 3 administrators, but if you've got 4 or 5 other office people that are going to help on the website, maybe we put them in as editors, or we put them in as instructors, or we put them in as LMS managers, but they're not administrators. And so having a better understanding of how roles and capabilities and systems work enable you to be able to have kind of a solutions engineer approach to a response rather than just being argumentative. If I'm going to tell a client no, I usually want to have some options available. So I can say no, but, no, we can do this. Right? Makes sense? That's part of the agenda. It's part of the homework. It's having those implied solutions ready to go. Now, during the conversation, things can change. Things can move up a beat, right? So if things move up a beat, how do you stay calm in the moment? I've had a lot of people ask me this, and you'll notice when I talk on these lives, a lot of times there's a gap in speaking. There's a silent moment. If you've heard me doing a podcast, you would hear gaps in speech. You would hear spaces. I've built that over time. I used to be one of these people raised in Philadelphia, always had something to say. An answer was always quick to come. If people couldn't answer you quickly, they probably didn't know what they were doing. That is not real world for me anymore. I think it puts people much more at ease if you regulate your cadence and you factor in some gaps and you give people a chance to take a breath. So one of the first things in staying calm in the moment is effective breathing techniques. Now, if you're in the middle of a meeting and you start going, they're going to think you're crazy or you're incredibly weak or something. But what I'm saying is give yourself an opportunity to breathe while you're communicating. I'm online with you right now having a one-sided conversation because I haven't seen comments come in on the live yet. And I'm taking a break. I'm taking a full breath. I am filling my oxygen, my lungs up with oxygen. I am making things happen. So put yourself into a position in the heat of the moment and give yourself the opportunity to take a break in speech, get a breath in, and just, you need air to go. You need air to go. The other thing you need to do is really listen to what people say. Really listen to the questions, really listen to their responses, and what they call active listening. Repeat some of it back. If you're on Zoom, make sure you're looking at the camera. If you're in person, make sure you're making eye contact. Paraphrase what you hear. Someone says, well, I don't like that because I think it's stupid. Say, well, I hear you saying that you think it's stupid, but could you outline a couple of specifics as to why you feel that way? So you repeat back what they said in a different way, which symbolizes you actually heard them and you recognize it. And then you ask for more input. You try to make that happen. When they go to expand their concern or to respond to you, make sure you let them finish. I have a couple of people that I work with that never let you finish a sentence. They always butt in and want to finish your sentences for you or finish a thought. Let people finish speaking. If it is a difficult conversation that you've initiated with a client, they might feel pent up. They might feel that they have to express themselves. Let them express themselves. Let them get it out. Rephrase what you hear. Maintain eye contact. And maybe ask some qualifying questions if they've really gone off a beaten path a little bit. Now, you've already heard me say pause. I'll pause when I'm speaking, but I also pause when I'm responding. If someone asks me a question and that question should realistically take some thought, remember, I've done homework and I've planned and I've thought about responses before the conversation. So it might be right on the tip of my tongue. I'm still going to take 5-6 seconds, pause, and then respond. I'm going to re-clarify their concerns. I'm going to choose words that resolve rather than inflame the issue. I'm going to use language as a tool to put them at ease. All right. And then even if I'm feeling all pent up inside, I'm still going to project myself as being calm. I'm going to have slow hand movements. I talk with my hands a lot. So I'm going to have slow hand movements. I'm going to have pauses in my speech. I'm going to articulate what I say very clearly, and I'm going to make eye contact with them. All of this comes from a position of strength. All of this comes from a position of confidence. And that confidence emotionally is going to be what helps resolve half the issue anyway. A lot of what I'm talking about is like maintaining that positive body language. So if we think about positive body language, if I'm talking to somebody like this, how's that make you feel? What about this? Huh? How's this make you feel? But if I relax my shoulders and I keep my posture open and I maintain steady eye contact and I stay calm, it really lends itself towards being communicative, confident, and now I seem like somebody that you could confide in. I seem like somebody you could really share your real opinion with. And then we could solution engineer it out. We could actually resolve an issue and possibly come out the other side of this thing working a whole lot better together. This is part of what we call de-escalation. So we want to de-escalate any kind of heated conversation. We want to bring things down to an even keel. And as all of this is happening, maybe you take some samples along the way. If you're really good at this, maybe you take some samples. Maybe you try and push a couple of triggers every now and then and see what happens. Okay? I know it sounds crazy, but you want to be able to recognize what the client's emotional triggers are. I am a white male, 57 years old. So if I have a client that is a female of color, especially if they're a single parent, there's going to be some built-in, I'm not going to use the word resentment, but there's going to be some built-in stereotypes. I may have an opinion of them and they may have an opinion of me. Whether we like it or not, that's what society is. As cavemen, we used to see things out in the plains or in the mountains or the wherever, hunting, gathering, fishing, all of those things. And the things that we would see would enable us to interact with our environment and survive. So now, thousands, millions of years later, whatever your belief system is, we have the ability to make certain assessments, which become prejudices. Okay? So these prejudices lead us down a certain path. And sometimes those prejudices can lead people to react in different ways. So I want to recognize different emotional triggers. I'm probably not going to talk to a single mom of color as being, well, I understand if, you feel like your back's up against the wall, taking care of the kids and all. Like, I'm not going to say that in a conversation, right? You don't want to hit on things that are inflammatory. You want to stick to what the cause of the conversation is and rectify whatever the obstacles are. So I'll put it this way. How would you recognize an emotional trigger if you experienced one? So some folks will raise their voice. Other folks will use absolute language. If you're married, you've heard this before. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, doesn't matter what. You've heard this before. You always do that. You never do that. You never take out the trash. You always leave empty bottles in the kitchen. You always throw your laundry on the floor. You never wipe off the sink when you're done brushing your teeth. And so you know that those things aren't true. But because they're upset, because they're frustrated, that's the language they might use. So that's one of those triggers that you'll notice. Body language shifts. That's a good one. If you really know somebody, you can tell when the channel's been changed. So you want to keep your eye on body language. You want to keep your eye on the eye contact, the pursing of the lips, and the language that they use. You want to make sure that you notice these things so that you can recognize, oh, that's a trigger. I should probably stay away from that unless I have to address it. That's the other thing. If somebody has a trigger, but it's the main reason for your conflict, it's going to have to be discussed. So you're just going to have to endure that. You're going to have to figure out how to address that in a calm, agenda, easy way, right? So there's ways to do things. Now, speaking of ways to do things, that's going to take us down to empathy and acknowledgement. Let's say you have a client and they're frustrated. Okay, they're frustrated with always doing the editing on Tuesday and they really wish it was done on Thursday. All right, well, hey, I can see how that might be frustrating for you. Let me see if I can move that time block up in the week for you. So you have empathy and you make the acknowledgement of how they feel about something. And then, if possible, offer a solution that makes sense. You know, there's times where someone will say, well, you're right to feel upset. You know, you're right to feel upset. I'd feel the same in your shoes. I hesitate to say things like that. I hesitate to say things that overly justify someone to treat me like dirt. So when someone says you're right to feel upset, I would probably say something along the lines of, hey, I'm picking up that you're upset about this. Let's see if we can move forward and come up with a solution that keeps this from happening again. I'm always trying to use language that, because I don't want it, if you're in a client situation and you're always taking the blame for everything, next thing you know, you're giving them their money back. And that's one thing you want to protect. You want to protect your income and your revenue. Now, at the end of the game, when you're having one of these difficult conversations, it's probably because of something. So there's going to be some kind of a solution or a reconciliation somehow, right? It's a difficult conversation for some reason. So what do we want to do? We want to focus on solutions. I say this all the time. I'm like a solutions engineer. When I see a problem, I try and figure out, well, what can I do to fix this? So focusing on solutions instead of problems. I say that all the time. So, you know, how can we make this right for you? What would be the ideal outcome? These are great questions that you can ask a client and then try to, you know, solve it, offer a solution that gets them closer to what they think is the next step. Instead of explaining delays, like let's say something gets behind on schedule. Let's say you made a schedule and it looked great on the calendar and you had a scope of work planned, but now the clients increased the scope of work by 40%, but they still want the work done by the same day. Well, we know that that's not going to work out. But instead of explaining the delay, instead of saying, well, this and this and that and that and this dot and this, instead of being like that, just suggest a revised timeline. Okay. Hey, I understand the delay caused some frustration, right? But here's how we plan to expedite things moving forward. And based on the increased scope of work you've supplied and looking at our bandwidth to get it done, that's going to put us on this revised timeline right here. And this is something we can commit to. They might not be getting exactly what they want, but they're getting an acknowledgement and the idea that you're continuing to work with them. You want to show the commitment to the improvement. So you heard me say in that example, I said, we can expedite. Expedite's a great word. People love that. You know, we can expedite our process and we can get it done. We can make a commitment to this date, right? So I want to show a commitment to that improvement. Now, let's say you do this once, twice, maybe even 3 times with a client. there has to be some recognition somewhere that someone's dropped the ball. Either you've dropped the ball or the client's dropped the ball. Something's caused a gap in communication and somebody's pissed. So these difficult conversations are happening for a reason. So what we need to think of is, how do we build a long-term resilience for difficult conversations? Meaning, how do we fix the difficult situation and how do we keep it from happening again? Well, one is to look at your communication technique. Are you using a client portal to keep your customer informed of the progress of their project? Are you using email if you don't have a client portal to keep them abreast of what's going on in the project? Are you updating them when people on their staff are increasing the scope of work, which could damage the timeline? You got to make sure that you're having good open communication. But there's another part of this whole thing, right? And that is, how much of this difficult conversation thing is really an extension of yourself not practicing mindfulness and stress management. So stick to a sleep routine, stay physically active, go to the gym, ride a bicycle, walk the dog, do something physical to help relieve some of the stress and angst that you might have built up over a day. Make sure you get good sleep, take decent breaks, stay hydrated, all of these things. If you like to read, but you're always reading some business books or you're always reading on Six Sigma stuff, find something that you can read or listen to for entertainment and just give yourself that little bit of a break. Now, remember when I talked about my Remarkable 2 tablet? Every meeting that I have, I take notes, and these notes stay in my Remarkable. Part of what's important about notes is I can look back on these notes and I can remember what happened, how I felt, and what I jotted down in the moment. That helps me learn from my past experiences. So if you document yourself and you're well documented, you can look back on some of the things that you've documented and you can say, okay, how can I learn from these past experiences to not do that again? How can I put some processes in place? Or how can I train my people so that they don't put me in this position again? And so you want to learn from past experiences, and you want to consider all of it. Consider the emotions, the time spent, the planning, lack of revenue. Think of all those things and go, what could I have done differently? And if there's something that you can identify that you could have done differently, then you know that you can do differently moving forward. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about, and this is going to sound like I'm actually pushing a service at this point at the end of this whole talk, but it's seek professional development. I want to do this without making it sound like I'm the ShamWow guy. This is not an infomercial. This is meant to add value to people that take a moment to listen. So if you need to, seek professional development. Sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees. So get yourself into some workshops and webinars, some coaching or mentorship. Get yourself some books. If you're in the automotive industry, I wrote Service Writing in Black and White. That's a great book for service professionals. If you are in leadership, if you're a CEO, if you run an organization, my other book that's published is called Action Leadership from the Edge. I believe everybody is called to a certain position of leadership in life, and I'm trying to encourage people to embrace that position of leadership, because whenever you don't, you create a giant gap in leadership, and the world hates gaps. So it allows non-natural leaders to fill spaces instead of natural leaders to fill spaces. This is all my thoughts. Okay. So workshops and webinars, those are great. Coaching and mentorship, that's like next level. Books and podcasts, that's good to trickle information in, keep yourself going at a good pace. Online courses. If you go to manananomas.com and you go to our course menu, you're going to see that not only are we a web development firm with hosting services, but we also offer courses like 5 days to a healthier you, keto. If you like, thinking about diet and losing weight, we've got a whole thing on keto in there. We've got to think about just believe in yourself. We've got all kinds of courses in there. Goal setting. We've got a short form goal course and we have a long form goal course. The long form course is a whole year's worth of training that's in there. So online courses, I think it's really huge to get into a course, give yourself a regimen, give yourself some accountability and make that happen. Now, I shouldn't say most of, really good training sources that have online courses, books, and coaching, they're going to have masterminds or group sessions, or even they might just call them, hey, join the Zoom call or join office hours. They'll have that. And if they do, I really advise you to take advantage of it. That's good stuff. So here's the deal. If we get down to the end of my notes here and we think about what we're really talking about, we're saying if you're in business or in general, chances are you're going to have a tough conversation with somebody. It's going to be an intentional tough conversation. Like, I'm going to go into this meeting. It's going to be a tough meeting. So how do you stay calm during those tough conversations? How do you plan for them? How do you execute them? And how do you prevent them from happening in the future? That's what all this has been about. And if you find yourself that you're in that position and you're saying, man, I could really use some help with this, or hey, Kurt seems pretty solid on this subject, I would encourage you to go to manananomas.com, go to the top, book a call. We'll jump on a quick call together, have a quick conversation, and figure out kind of like where in our workflow would be a good spot for you to land. All right. I hope that you are having a wonderful day. Thanks for coming to another one of our Mañana No Mas lives. And I will see you another time. One of these times, we should see some comments and stuff roll in. That would be awesome. Have a good one. Let me cue this up so I can say goodbye. There we go. And we're out.